Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are looking at Brene Brown's Atlas of the Heart. Last time we looked at places we go when we compare. This time we are moving into places we go when things don't go as planned, right? Places we go when things do not go as planned. And so we have really a couple different little categories here. We have boredom, and then we have kind of a sort of chunk here. We have, and we're going to go over this, but disappointed, regretful, discouraged, resigned, and frustrated. And they kind of like all lump together. Boredom is kind of like the gateway drug, right? Boredom is like, I think we've all experienced some form of boredom, right? It's this state where we are feeling kind of malcontent. We're like, I want to do something and I don't know what to do. Right? It's the uncomfortable state of wanting to do something satisfying and exciting and interesting and not being able to do it. Right? And we are losing the ability to be bored in this day and age because we have social media, because we have smartphones. Like now we get bored and we're just like, "Oh, let me just like pop on my phone." It doesn't really serve us to do that because we lose creative space when we do that, right? Boredom is your imagination calling to you. So if you feel bored and you're like, "Oh, I'm just gonna turn on the TV or I'm just gonna go to my smartphone," you're losing the ability to create something, to entertain yourself in some way. We now move from boredom into distraction. That's kind of how it goes now. And so we move from boredom to distraction, and what happens in distraction is that we focus on literally everything else that is somewhat irrelevant to our legitimate, genuine lives. And so it is a dangerous thing now because boredom used to be, right? Like if you go to your parents, you're like, "Oh, mom, I'm bored." She's like, "Great, go out and play." Right? Now boredom leads you to distraction, and idle hands are the devil's workshop. And so people get into all types of things they shouldn't get into when they're bored, and they're looking to be entertained versus creating something to entertain themselves. It's a very dangerous state that we have gotten into, quite frankly. I see it all the time, specifically with men. They lack stimulation when they come home from like work and they just turn on the TV and they just like passively consume for hours. And it's like you have a house to do things with. What do you mean? Right? And so boredom is kind of the gateway to, because things don't go as planned. The thing that didn't go as planned is your interest, right? Your interest is not going as planned. And so you want to let yourself sit in an uncomfortable, boring moment, right? Like sometimes we're forced to sit in boring things, like it's a boring meeting, it's a boring discussion, or whatever the case. But I remember a thing I used to always do if I was sitting in something I found boring, I would take out my notebook, I would take my pen, and I would force myself to listen and I would write it down. And it just made me pay attention better. Right. And so, like, if you just sit in the thing and find a way to be more engaged with it, or you sit in a thing and you find a way to appreciate it, right? Then you're building your own character, motivation, focus, discipline, etc. Instead of moving into distraction, which is not the best thing, quite frankly. And and I will just say we live in a very bored, distracted world. People don't have purpose, they don't have meaning. Why? Well, they don't even know themselves or what interests them or what they can do to create it or what they can do, period. Right? So it is a sort of a sad state of affairs. What ends up happening then, of course, when we move from boredom to distraction, we go from distraction to like voyeurism, right? We're just watching other people do things. Right? You're watching movies, other people are doing the things. We're getting into the place where it's doers versus watchers, active versus passive, creators versus consumers, right? Like we're really getting, we're pretty firmly entrenched into that, right? Even like, look at this, right? I'm creating, you're consuming, right? And so, like, one of the things I'm always working on with my clients in transformation is get to your authentic identity so you can create something, so you can do the things that you love to do that are productive and you can bear good fruit for other people, right? That's always part of my own transformative process for my clients. We move from like being a Deborah or David all the way through make your own ministry, right? And so it's a process. So boredom is something I think that's like the gateway when we want something to be exciting or satisfying and then it's not. The other sort of five, disappointment on this slide, and then regret, discourage, resign, and frustrated on the next couple slides, have to do when we want something to happen and it doesn't happen that way. So disappointment and regret have to do with when the outcome is the focus. And then discouragement and resignation has to do with when our effort is the focus, right? And we'll talk about that. So you can feel like a lot of this, a lot of the times, I think the world is living in disappointment and regret, quite frankly, because a lot of people come up with expectations that are not realistic and they don't even know it, right? So we can have two different types of expectation. We can have unmet, unexpressed, or examined and expressed expectations. And the expectation is when you want an outcome to happen, right? I like her definition, so I want to read it. When we develop expectations, we paint a picture in our head of how things are going to be and how they're going to look. And we break our own hearts by doing so because we're trying to force our wants, our will on an external reality, on an outcome, and it just doesn't work like that. And I know people like to talk about manifestation and like thoughts become things. And there is truth to that in some capacity, but you can't just wish on a lucky star for the thing to happen. You have to actually like firmly know that it's coming to you. And it's a skill. And so a lot of the time, the thing about like even that with like manifesting and all that stuff, like you have to detach yourself from the outcome. Like anybody will tell you that. You have to detach yourself from the outcome because the outcome's irrelevant. And so a lot of the times when you're in expectation, you're focusing on the outcome. And in most things in life, that's not going to do it for you, right? Like even every degree I've ever gotten, I don't focus on getting the degree. I focused on one class at a time. I knew that the path was leading to this degree, but I wasn't being motivated by getting that degree. I was motivated by the classes that I got to learn in. Right? And so there's a reason why, like, I finish a lot of the things I start. It's because I'm not focusing on the end of it. I'm focusing on the process of it. If I was so caught up on getting, actually, this has happened a couple times where, like, I'm focused on the outcome, like, oh, I can't wait to get certified in this thing. And the whole thing ends up blowing up and I don't get certified in it. It's really interesting. And I did feel disappointment, quite frankly, because we set our own selves up for failure when we try to hope for the expectation that may or may not come, right? And so disappointment is essentially unmet expectations, right? Her definition here that there are many definitions of disappointment, but this one emerged, and I think it's as clear as it can get. Disappointment is unmet expectations. The more significant the expectations, the more significant the disappointment, right? If your expectation is your husband's never going to cheat on you, if he does, you're going to be crushed. If your expectation is I'm never going to get divorced, and you get divorced, it's going to crush you, right? Like, it's just the better thing to do is to be objective and present. hey, everybody's flawed, everybody makes mistakes. It is possible that my husband can cheat on me. I genuinely hope he does not. Objective and present. Hey, you know what? No kid is perfect. My kid's probably going to get in trouble at some point, and I just want to make sure that I let them know if they do a bad thing, they're not bad when they do. Right? Like being objective and present and getting our emotions out of there and getting our unfair expectations out of there, taking the love blinders off or the hate blinders off, or will help you to avoid disappointment and regret. Because again, remember, disappointment and regret are outcome based. So, disappointment happens when you believe you did not influence the outcome, and regret, which we'll see in a second, comes when you believe you did influence the outcome and you're upset about how it turned out, and you're like, oh, dang, I wish that didn't happen that way. I regret that, right? We didn't like the outcome and we didn't like our part in it for regret. For disappointment, we didn't like the outcome. We wish it was different. We're disappointed, right? And so unmet expectations leads to disappointment and regret, but we can avoid it by being objective and being present in our lives. So looking at regret, right? Similar to disappointment, we feel regret when we caused it to occur and we kind of wish we didn't cause it to occur, right? Regret is it didn't work out the way I wanted, and the outcome was caused by my decisions, actions, or failure to act. And so, but again, if we examine our expectations better, it's a little bit easier for us to manage and mitigate our regret and our disappointment. Because then we're like, do I care about how this turns out? You know what? No, I'm just going to go. I'm going to have fun and I'm just going to let it be what it is. Hard to be disappointed or have regret when you're kind of approaching it that way. Right? So expectations all the time. This is like the number one thing I am constantly trying to teach, like pretty much anybody I talk to, but definitely my clients, is like you expected that to go some sort of a way, and now you're feeling some kind of a way because it didn't. Right? Because when we're in expectation, we're setting our hopes on an outcome we cannot control. And that's almost always going to set us up to fail. Right? And a lot of times we just have unrealistic expectation. It's like, oh, I think my cat's going to live for 20 years. Well, if she dies in 2, I'm going to be even more destroyed because I set up an unrealistic parameter. The truth is, my cat could die at any time, but I hope she lives a good long life. Right? And so it's just about being objective. But our regret, a lot of the times, we can be less regretful when we are more intentional about what we show up in and how we show up. The biggest regrets most of the time that I see from people are when they are out like operating out of non-player character energy, right? Like you're either in main character energy or you're in non-player character. And non-player character is your life's on autopilot. You don't know why you're doing what you're doing. You're just letting things kind of go the way they go. When you are in main character energy, even when the bad things happen, you're like, okay, well, you know what? I decided this. I put myself in this situation. Like I allowed for this. Like I can't really be mad at this. And I will tell you what, having done that in the last 7 years, just really stepping into why am I saying yes to this? Why am I saying no to this? Has really mitigated regret, right? Like for me personally, I don't really, now I'm just like, I can't be mad. I can't be mad at the expectation or the outcome because like I was in it and I knew what I was getting into. So I can't really, what am I going to say? What am I going to say? Right? So it's easier when you're more accountable and aware and in like intentionality in your life. You feel less regret because you try to anyway, make less dumb decisions and actions. It doesn't mean you don't, right? But it means that like you are just more aware of what you're getting into. And so disappointment and regret have to do with our focus on outcomes that were kind of unrealistic or unintentional or what we didn't want to happen, right? And I will say to a point about when we have expectations and we have intentionally cultivated sharing the expectation with our friends, family, and they fall below the standard. We can still get hurt because we were vulnerable and we asked for what we wanted and we needed and it didn't come out that way. Right? Like I could give you a lot of examples, honestly. But in one of my past relationships, I would give the needs that I had and I would express those needs. And I had expectations around the fact that, hey, I've examined this, I'm sharing with you my needs, and you say you love me, so I'm expecting you to meet those needs in the way I need them met. And then when they did not do that, there still can be a hurt, right? There's still like a, hey, like I told you I needed this, and now I'm not interested in our relationship, or I'm not interested in you, or I'm not interested in sharing with you anymore because like what's the point? You don't care, right? You can still get your feelings hurt even when you're intentional and when you examine your expectation and it's around a need, you can. And so you eventually you get to a place where you are surrounding yourself with people who can hold space for you and who want to do the best they can to show up and meet those needs. Um, there are times that we have expectations that we examine and we ask for a need to be met, and it's not a realistic need. That does happen too. So there's a lot around this, but it is worth examining expectation and where you have expectation in your life. Because let me just tell you, it is a really slippery, subtle, little sneaky thing. And if you have a lot of disappointment or regret or frustration, which we'll talk about in a second, or anger, you probably have a lot of expectations and things are not going the way you plan them and it's making you upset. I can like almost guarantee that. So, expectations, examined or unexamined, when we focus on the outcome, we can have disappointment or regret. When we focus on our own effort, we can move into discouragement and resignation, right? This happens a lot. I see this happen a lot. When you try and you try and you try and you fail and you fail and you fail, you start to lose confidence and enthusiasm around the thing. I see this all the time with dating, right? Dating does not go as planned for most people. And so what ends up happening is that they get into discouragement and they lose the motivation to continue dating, right? Or they're like, you know what? I'm done. They're resigned. They're resigned. They're like, I'm not going to date. I'm not going to marry anyone. I've lost the confidence about future effort around this, right? That motivation to continue is gone. It happens a lot in relationships that don't go as planned, right? The dating scene for sure, but marriages, right? You're discouraged when you keep seeing the same issues again and again and again, and you're like, I don't know that I really want to keep showing up here, right? And it has to do with the effort you've put out, has to do with what you're putting into the situation. And so, like, but it can be anything. It could be school, it can be a business pursuit, it can be a friendship, it could be home ownership, it could be anything. I have someone right now that I know who's really always wanted to be a homeowner, and they're about 60 years old, and they're definitely losing confidence and enthusiasm about the idea of home ownership. And so they're teetering between discouraged and resigned. Like, hey, I'm not going to own a home. Like, that's fine. And so a lot of the time, discouragement kind of leads into resignation. Like you're moving from, I don't know if this is the right thing to, you know what, I'm not gonna do it. And when you're in resignation, you don't show up for the thing. If you're resigned about the fact that this relationship is doomed to fail, you're gonna stop emotionally and physically showing up. Right. And so we get into resignation a lot. You've heard like if somebody's resigning from a position, it's because they've lost confidence in the future with that position or that company. They're resigning. And so resignation is kind of like when you're ready to cut the cord, you're ready to stop showing up, you're not giving forth the effort there, you're all set, you're done. And that again, sometimes resignation is something that's planned, but a lot of the times it's when it's not planned. Like you didn't expect to be cut off or cutting off the company, just you couldn't go on with it. Right? So discouragement and resignation are to do with effort. And discouragement is the process, and resignation is sort of the finality of the thing. And you know, that I would say it would behoove you perhaps to see where you feel discouragement and resignation in your life, right? Like my efforts aren't paying off here because it just means that maybe you need to look at the situation differently, right? Like you don't need to be discouraged about it. You can be grateful for the time you spent with it and still lose the motivation to persist or pursue it, right? Like you can be really grateful about the time spent with your partner or an ex-boyfriend or an ex-friend. And instead of being discouraged, you can be encouraged because you're like, you know what? We had a really good 4 years. We really helped each other through this hard season. And it's good. You know, it's good that it's ending. I'm glad it is. You know, I wish them the best. Right? You can recognize the discouragement or the resignation and know that I'm done with this or I'm not going to be putting forth the effort anymore, but not be in disappointment or discouragement or resignation if you just flip it to gratitude. Appreciation is a biggie, presence. You know, thankfulness really is an important skill to cultivate. And a lot of the time, when things don't go as planned, we struggle because we're letting a thing go or there's a forced end to a thing and we don't know how to end a thing well. And we get into discouragement and resignation, but you don't have to be discouraged that it's not working out. You can be thankful it's not working out. The things usually that don't work out for you are really working out for you, right? Man's rejection is God protection all the time. And then that final one is frustration, right? Frustration is when we feel like there's an outcome we don't like and we want to change it and we can't. We get frustrated, right? Frustration is a constant companion of mine. And I've had to work on it and work on it and work on it. And what I have learned is if I'm feeling frustration come up in me, I am trying to control something that is not mine to control. And that could be anything. That could be a slow driver. That could be my loud neighbor. That could be some rude person on social media, right? Like there's so many things that anybody, I specifically, can get frustrated about. And frustration can come into the anger space as well, right? Like if you're frustrated at first because you feel like you can't do anything about this outcome, you can't change it. If you instead of recognizing that and letting it go, just be like, okay, it's not my circus, not my monkeys, you get more fixated on the fact you can't do anything about it, you're going to feel more helpless. And frustration plus helplessness is going to equal anger, right? And so anger, and if you look around, we've got an anger epidemic. Why? Because a lot of people are in victim mode and a lot of people are in helplessness and frustration because they see a lot of things they can't do anything about and they don't like it and they're angry. This is very much the case with like Trump derangement syndrome, right? People are just so mad at the fact that President Trump is the president. And why? Because they feel like they can't do anything about it. And so they're frustrated and they're helpless to change it. And so all they can do is be angry in like the comments. And it's the craziest thing I've ever seen because people will literally throw Donald Trump into every and any content ever. Just like he lives in their mind rent free. I see it so often, and I'm like, that literally has nothing to do with Trump. Like, I don't understand. And again, if I'm triggering your Donald Trump angriness, I apologize. But again, the whole point of being aware of our emotions is so that we can better regulate them, right? We want to get aware of what we're experiencing in our reality so we can experience other things in our reality, right? We don't want to live in frustration because it means we're fixated on things that we cannot do anything about. Yeah, of course you're going to be mad if you feel like you can't control anything in your life, right? And so I say it a lot, control the controllables. Control the controllables. And so it's just a constant intentionality, it's a constant awareness, and it's getting very good at like knowing when your emotional state changes, right? Like I check in with myself and I'm like, why am I upset? When I left the house, I was fine. Now I'm angry. What happened? Now I'm frustrated. What happened? And it's like, oh, I had a phone call I didn't like. And now I've shifted levels. And I'm like, oh, gotta work through that. Right. So it is emotional regulation, emotional awareness, integration. They're like low-key a full-time job, especially for those of us who have big feelings, big emotions, big thoughts, a lot of interactions, things of that nature, right? So when things don't go as planned, we can feel a lot of types of ways, and none of them, like our knee-jerk reaction is not great, right? Boredom, disappointment, regret, discouragement, resignation, frustration, like those aren't great, you know? We want to get to a place where if it doesn't go as planned, we just kind of shift. We're just like, oh, okay, well, that didn't go as I expected it to, but great, what a happy mistake, right? I've been doing that a lot lately because I used to be somebody who was very set on my routine and like all the things, and that has shifted a lot in the last 7 years. Um, I used to be somebody that like I had to do my laundry the same day. I had to do my like the same day of the week. I had to shower at certain times. Like I was very sort of routine and regimented. And now that I'm coming out of that, I'm like, wow, like I don't even know that girl. But I was also so busy. I like scheduled everything to like a T. But now I'm in more of a flow, especially my schedule. And so if someone like if we have a plan for something and like the restaurant's closed or they're late or something happens and we divert elsewhere, I'm just like, "Oh, cool. This is a happy mistake. This worked out way better." I like you leave space for the unexpected and it's actually really cool and it's good and it doesn't have to be scary. It doesn't have to be frustrating. It doesn't have to be disappointing, you know? And so when we fixate on the outcome, oh, I really wanted to go to this restaurant. Yeah, of course you're gonna be disappointed when it's closed when you get there, right? But if you kind of hold looser and you get more objective and present and you're not so fixated on the outcome or focused on what you thought was going to happen, right? Married to the outcome, then you can avoid some of these more than not indefinitely, right? We feel things. But yes. So that is Atlas of the Heart, chapter 3, things that, places we go, emotional places we go when things do not go as planned. And and it is possible to go into other emotions other than the ones listed here. It's just that the sort of knee-jerk reaction are these negative ones. But now, like I said, I'm living proof it can be shifted. And so part of the work is to shift it, right? So next time when we come back, we will talk about places to go when it's beyond us. It's very exciting. Awe, wonder, confusion, curiosity, interest, surprise. I really like this chapter. So I will see you guys on the next video. I hope you're enjoying this series. And if you have any questions, just shoot me a comment below or message me.